Thanks to Jason and the foundation team for having us. I'm Manveer, and this is my co-founder Aditya. Before starting Zenith, I spent over 4 years at Confluent shipping developer products. I also built out the growth engineering at Dropbox that powered over 8 figures of revenue for the self-serve business. And there was the tech lead on Google search ranking team, where he built out a lot of the core parts of the search ranking infra, which is used by the traditional Google search as well as the new AI search. So today we are going to talk about the AI searches disrupting and creating a new channel and opportunity for all of us. We will share about why it matters now, talk about the mental models that you can use to navigate this change, and then lastly, the tactics that you can start using this week to have a real impact. Here is the opportunity. For the longest of the time, Google search was the front door to the internet. But with the launch of ChatGPT over 3 years ago, now that has changed. More and more people are now using ChatGPT, and this is especially true for the personas that you're targeting in B2B, where people are early adopters of these technologies. Having an impact on the SEO side typically takes at least a year or so for you to even start showing results. While with the ChatGPT, the opportunity is that there is very little overlap, and the impact is also something that you can start seeing very soon. So that's the biggest opportunity. And as startup founders, this is like where we can leverage this channel. So you might also ask naturally, right? Is this happening now? Is this a problem today? In January 2025, ChatGPT started showing the citation links. And as a result of that, it started redirecting users, the very high intent users, to the websites. As an example, Webflow saw that they were getting around 8% of the signups through these new AI search channels. And also, more interestingly, the traffic that was coming through from these channels was converting at 6x the rate of the traditional Google search. So this channel is real, the traffic is real, and the ROI is also proven. The next obvious question that you may have is, as a startup, can you really make an impact here? Can you really leverage it? So one of our early customers who is competing with the giants like Snowflake, Databricks, is essentially in a very competitive category. If you would have started working with them on SEO only, it would have taken them a few months to quarters to even have some impact. We started focusing more on the AEO there. And within 3 months, we were able to increase their mention rate, citation rate by over 80%. And the net traffic that was coming to their website through these channels also increased by over like 27%. This is again proven that as a startup, if you start investing in this channel, you can start seeing the results. So with that, how does this new world work? We will share 5 simple mental models that you need to win. The first one, think about it as you're not trying to optimize for the training data that would take you years to even make an impact. You are really trying to optimize for the real-time search that these models are doing to synthesize the answer. And this is where you have the opportunity. When you make a change over here, you would start seeing the results pretty soon, sometimes even the next day. The next mental model is, and this is important, coming from the traditional search again. In the traditional search, you were optimizing to be the number one on the Google search result. Over here, you are not trying to optimize for that. In the traditional search, people were being guided towards the number one link, and then people were doing their own research by reading the links and so on. While all this work is now being front-loaded by ChatGPT and the other AI search engines, and what they really are doing is summarizing the answer back to the user. So the opportunity for you here is that you want to make sure that you are cited more often versus being only the number one. The next big mental model here is that the users are also using these conversations to ask very long tail, like very specific questions. For example, in the Google search world, people would be asking on an average 6-word questions. Sometimes, okay, what are the real-time analytics tools available? And then in ChatGPT, what they really tend to do is they would start asking very specific questions. I'm looking for the real-time analytics tool that would integrate with microservice architecture, with XYZ tools, and so on. And these conversations become very long because people tend to have a lot of back and forth in trying to understand what are the options that they can use for their problems. So the opportunity here is to provide answers to these like hyper-specific questions so that you can show your expertise, and it increases the opportunity for showing up in these answers. The next important thing over here is to also keep in mind that these AI models are also looking for content that can show them expertise and then provide them quality insights. So traditionally, most of the time, like landing pages were typically like rehash of what is already out there on the internet. And as a result, like 19 out of those 20 landing pages really rarely would have an impact. What you are really trying to show is that in these landing pages, the content that you are creating, provide those unique insights that you have. You can use your expertise, provide input from your original research that you might be doing, the conversation that you might be having with the customers in the real time, and so on. This is essentially like the new quality signal that these models are using to validate your expertise, and then that increases your chances for citations. The next big thing is to also think of this as a citation ecosystem. And this has been true even for the traditional like search, but I think the biggest thing over here is that AI models are looking for both authority as well as authenticity. So what they are looking for is branded content that might be available on your website, on your competitor's website, on these like PR news outlets and so on. And then they are also trying to balance that with the authentic content from discussion forums like Reddit, user-generated content from YouTube, Medium, and so on. The goal here is to make sure whatever you are like trying to communicate, that message is amplified in the wider internet. So to summarize, these are the 5 mental models you need to be aware of to navigate this change. The first one is you're optimizing not for the training data, you're optimizing for the live real-time search. Second, you're not optimizing for only being the number one, you're optimizing for the frequency with which you are getting cited. Number 3 is you are optimizing for the hyper-specific questions that people are asking in these search engines. And then number 4 is about providing high-quality signal, which demonstrates real expertise. And last, you are trying to amplify that across not only your website, but across the internet. Think of them as how you are doing it. And then with how you are doing it, the next question is where do you want to really focus? Traditionally, if you think about it, the people, when they're going through their buyer journey, they start asking broad questions at top of the funnel. They're trying to understand the problem. This part of the funnel is very commoditized. Questions like what is data warehousing? This is something that the AI models are very well trained to answer themselves. And if you look at the bottom of the funnel, when people are already aware of the problem, the solution landscape, and they're trying to make a decision, these are the kind of questions which you would typically want like a high touch point with a real human in the loop. Middle of the funnel essentially is the place where people are problem aware and they are asking very specific questions so that they can get answers about understanding the whole solution landscape. And this is your biggest opportunity. So like questions where they are trying to understand what is the alternative to X, solution X, what are the ways the solution X works with existing your stack and so on. These are the product specific questions which AI cannot answer by itself. And it needs your expertise, which you can communicate through the content and you can help essentially get yourself more visible in that. So with that, now we know why this change is important, what is happening, and how you can really think about this change. Now, what can you start doing today? Here is like a 5-step simple playbook that you can start deploying today, which would really help you increase your visibility. So step number 1, this is also like one of the most important steps. Think of this as like your compass as you are navigating this change. You want to make sure you are identifying the real user questions because you want to make sure the content that you are putting out is going to take time and effort, and you are actually doing it for the right sort of questions that the people are asking. The way you can identify these questions is look at your sales channel, look at the conversations that people are having in your support tickets, and also look at your competitors, right? What are they like? Some of it is again like from the traditional like SEO world, but then the goal here is not to be focused on the keywords. The goal is to focus on what are the kind of questions that people are trying to answer, and then use that as a guiding principle going forward. So once you have established these questions, the next step for you is to establish a baseline, because whatever you measure essentially gets improved. And for this one, there are like this is essentially like a commodity at this point. There are like over 60 plus tools that really let you measure your like AI visibility. The way to select them would be look at the cheapest tool, which allows you to scrape web results. There are plenty of tools out there which do API calls. Amplitude released one last week, and that essentially is measuring through API calls, which is false and inaccurate. You want to measure something that essentially is tracking the real user behavior. And then the things that you want to track are, you want to make sure you are tracking how often are you appearing, what questions are triggering those citations, and who else is showing up. And then the key engines that you want to track are obvious ones: ChatGPT, Perplexity, and the Google AI mode. Once that is done, the next thing you want to start focusing on is optimizing the landing page. Here is a simple rule. You want to answer not only the main question, but you also want to answer all the follow-up questions that the user may be asking the chat engine directly. A bad landing page is only answering one question. A good landing page would answer 10 to 20 follow-up questions as well. And once this is done, you want to make sure that you are amplifying it. The two of the easiest wins that you can even do this week would be create 5 scrappy YouTube videos. YouTube is probably one of the most under-leveraged channel for B2B at this point. You can create 5 scrappy videos. And again, you don't need a big budget for creating these videos. You can go and record yourself. You can walk through a presentation and so on, and make sure you are putting it out consistently. And second is identifying the relevant Reddit threads for yourself. And the goal here is to not spam these threads. The goal is to go there and be authentic. The way you can do it is show up on these threads, provide real value, tell them who you are and what you are trying to communicate. That way, this is something that would again build trust. One concern people have with Reddit engagement is, especially on the marketing side, is people may worry that if they are telling that they belong to company XYZ and then they are trying to talk about their own product, that may get penalized by the AI search. That's essentially not true. AI models are essentially good at making sure that they can trust the moderation that the Reddit moderators are already doing. So if you are providing real value, AI will actually pick it up. And then lastly, think of it as not like a one-time investment. Think of it as like a growth initiative. Think of it as like a product. And the thing that you want to do here is that you want to make sure that you are setting it up correctly by proper tracking, proper process around iterating on it, so on. And you need a few different expertise here. So you need to think from it like an AEO perspective with the proper tracking, creation, and optimization. You want to make sure you're targeting the channels that these AI engines are picking up, and then you are iterating on it. And again, as a early stage startup, you again may have questions here around, would you be able to invest in this if this requires continuous investment?
No, I finished with a 3. Actually, one actually they didn't. Oh.
Yeah, so I guess the one question that people may have as an early stage startup is would you even have the resources to invest here? I think you can invest as much as you can. The more important part is to be consistent and follow a rigorous growth engineering mindset here. So that's essentially is what's going to help you drive the results. So with this, to zoom out a bit, this is not a tactic that you have to start using today. Think of it as a channel shift that is already happening. The Google search was the big front door to the internet for a long time. Then social kind of came and disrupted, and now with ChatGPT and AI search, it is again getting fundamentally disrupted again. And with every platform shift, what happens is the first movers get unfair advantages, and the late movers have to pay premium to take advantage of the channel. So the people who show up first, they actually are able to define the narrative and take advantage of the new channel. With that, we already talked about that January 2025 was a big inflection point in this new channel. We are still in this early adoption phase where people who move today would still be able to leverage this change and would be able to define the narrative. We believe that over the next 6 to 12 months, this channel is going to become table stakes. It's already becoming in certain scenarios. And then the opportunity that you have today is to not focus more on being the number one blue link. The goal here is to actually be cited and cited more often. So with that, I'll open it up for questions. One quick call out also, we do have this 20% discount for Foundation Capital family for the first 3 months. If you want to invest in this channel, happy to chat with you and see if this is a good fit.
Wait, I can go first.
Yeah, go for it, Ben. I was going to say, just in terms of format, I would feel free to raise your hand or type in questions in the chat, and we can try to relay them that way. But yeah, go for it, Ben.
Sure. So Manveer, I think awesome presentation. So there are just so many action items to do as a small startup with limited resource. I'm trying to see what can we do to get started. If I understood, bulk of it is really creating deep dive contents and make it available for these LLM guys to crawl, right? Is that kind of a area you
You're right.
suggest?
In some ways, the name of the game is to create content. But I think I think with the being like a small startup, I think the important part is to use your resources more judiciously and more strategically. So I think you need to be even more thoughtful about where you are investing that resources, right? So I think the playbook that we shared essentially is very much geared towards that. So what I would suggest would be start by looking at your existing customer data, your sales data, your support data to identify what are the real questions that your users are already asking, right? That's essentially is the key, because what your users are asking you, the people who are prospects would also be asking the same questions to these AI search engines, right? So your goal is to identify that questions and start creating content around that. And then make sure that content is, again, so you start with your own website first, make sure you are definitely putting it out, and then you can amplify it on other channels.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
Go.
I think you.
Yep.
Yeah. So you mentioned that help center is one of the great leverage to improve the AEO score. And my question is a little bit tactical and particular. A lot of companies actually run their help center with totally different domain name. And sometimes there's no way to go back to their homepage from the help center. What is your recommendation? Would it be better using same domain name for help center, or is it just okay to just totally separate out?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't think it would really matter as much. I think the more important part is that the message is being consistent on your own website and even on your health center if it is like on a different domain. And the other part is that I think it's also important to understand like why these AI models like use some of these other docs and help centers and so on, right? I think what they are really looking for is the answers to the questions that people are asking, right? And a lot of times these docs pages, the help center pages, they are intended to be the more representative truth. And that's why the models are really trusting some of that data. So I think the answer to that question is yes, it likely doesn't matter. I think AI is smart enough to figure out this is like your own page versus like somebody else's. The more important part is to make sure that you are creating that content, which is actually being authoritative in terms of answering the questions.
Awesome. Thank you.
Manvir, Adi, there's 3 questions in the chat. You want to just start with Darwin, and then sorry, I'm not sure who Stat P is, but they had an extension to the question, and then go to Alex after that.
Makes sense. Yeah. So can you talk about how to best work with you and the pricing of your service solution? We do have 2 offerings right now. It's on our website. You can go and check it out. It's Work With Me and Work For Me. The Work With Me is essentially like the targeted towards team that already have in-house content team and they are able to execute on that. We come in and provide the strategic guidance that you need to figure out where to focus and how to act on it. And the Work For Me essentially is for the teams who also need help on the content execution side. The Work With Me starts at $5,000 a month, and the Work For Me starts at $9,000 a month. And obviously, like with Foundation Capital, you do have the discount as well. So feel free to leverage that. The next question.
I can take the next one. So yeah, I think that definitely what we see is there is some overlap between Google AI overviews and ChatGPT. One way where they differ a lot is we see ChatGPT is a lot more head heavy, which means that the subset of URLs it refers is fewer, versus Google tends to be a lot more tail heavy, which means that Google will to create synthesize this answer, it will look at a lot more URLs, and which actually makes sense because Google has a ton of URLs indexed. So that is one difference. What is similar though is in this case, which basically works to our favor as small startups, is the user behavior is similar, right? Like the user, instead of the 3-word question on Google AI overviews, they go and ask the long tail question, 25-word long question. And that forces Google to look for the specific information on that question. And that gives you the window to get into that result. So while the mechanisms are slightly different, ultimately we do see that the strategy that works for ChatGPT works for Google and Perplexity as well.
Thank you.
I think, yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah, do you feel like you covered that one?
Yeah, I guess like maybe on how to evaluate these like tools, maybe on quick note on that one. To be honest, like these tools essentially are like very similar, all of them. I think the two things that really matter are one is they should be scraping the real web experience. A lot of these tools are just building on top of the API, which is wrong because the experience, if you ask the same prompt a question to API versus going to the ChatGPT web interface, you will get different results. It's important to target the tool which is targeting the web experience because that's where your users are going to be targeting it. The second part is obviously the cost part of it. I would suggest go with the one which is the cheapest, essentially.
And one just extension to that, Manveer, a lot of these tools are doing a lot of simulations for the prompts, right? Given a website or a brand or a company, what you are building, they're trying to simulate what are the prompts that people might be typing. So what we get confused is if my visibility is really high for a prompt, how does it even matter if the actual users are not typing that prompt? So how do you bridge the gap between the things which we had in the SEO world, which is the keyword volume, to actually having the prompts and knowing what are real humans doing it? So that feels like a little confusing because in a simulation, you can always be of a high visibility. I don't know if I should celebrate, or if my visibility is really poor at a very bad prompt, I should like am I over investing? So I think, can you draw that parallel better, please?
Aditya, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I think no, the great question and basically goes to it that saying that what you measure is what you improve, and if your underlying prompts are wrong, then you will measure on the wrong thing, and then what you improve will also be wrong. And I will also club the answer to this. There is another question like how do you know what questions the users are asking, right? There are a few ways here, right? One is most of these tools, I think what I don't like about them is that they take your company product and they will feed it into one of these chat engines, and they will just generate some hypothetical questions, which all of them actually make sense, but they may or may not be the actual pain point that your users might have. There are some tools which scrape like have deals with some Chrome extension, and they use stolen user data to figure out like some prompts in the vicinity of what you do. That also I think probably works better in our experience in B2C for B2C companies because it tends to have, if you think about all this harvested data, it's mostly coming from a larger sample. So if you're looking for shoes, etc., that data works. But for B2B sales like data warehouse, etc., most of these, your target audience is not installing those shady Chrome extensions. So that doesn't work also. Now, what does work is firstly, if you have some data, like I think in the presentation when we shared the sales calls, etc., support, etc., you can look at in your category for your competitors, what kind of discussions, if they have, you have incumbents on Reddit, etc., what are people discussing? So from there, you can derive what are the pain points your users are having and that. And even in the absence of that, if you're super early, you can use your own intuition or the website of your competitors, right? What language are they speaking? Because that must be relating to the pain point and then convert it back to the specific questions. So those are the roughly set of spectrum of things you could do. Obviously, the more data you have, you can be a lot more data driven there and figure things out. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Nijansh, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, thanks, Manveer. Quick question. We are just starting out on a GTM for B2B sales, and while I understand the need for GEO and investing in that, do you do you think we should invest in SEO as well, or is it complementary, or should we totally ignore that channel and just invest in GEO?
Yeah, I would let Aditya answer that one.
Yeah, so I think I think the standard advice is that if you're so early, SEO takes a lot of money, a lot of time, and by that time maybe your SEO works, your company might have pivoted, right? Like the advice before ChatGPT used to be that focus on paid channels, and then once you figure things out, you can start investing in SEO. The slightly modification of that I would give is that Geo actually works a lot more faster. So focus a lot more on Geo, and whatever stuff that you do for Geo, I think is going to work for SEO as well later down the road. What you don't have to do, I think right now, if I contrast SEO versus Geo, don't focus a ton of effort on doing link building, etc., versus focusing on the right set of questions and user pain point and producing content at the right place. So you don't even, for that matter, if you're a small startup, your website won't realistically get on the first page of Google, but you don't have to write on your own website. You can go write on Reddit, Medium, YouTube, wherever else, right? That gets you ranked. So that's the advantage you have, that you have to come up with the messaging. AI will do its work to pick it up.
Got it.
There was another question from Adi here, which is he's asking that how do you decide what content is helpful for sales versus what is not? So I think it goes back to that experiment Manveer was mentioning, that it's a more data-driven thing if you want to be really precise, because a lot of these things also change week over week. So we see that last week something else and ChatGPT changed something else and now it's different. You have to run more data-driven experiment and measure like what content is resonating with LLMs, and then what kind of citations are you getting, and then double down on what is working. One other interesting tip, I think useful signal to look at is you can set up server-side logs to look at which of your pages are already being accessed by LLMs. So a lot of our clients that we work with are often surprised and they find valuable information, because this is something you will not find in your Google Analytics because that's capturing client-side logs. But in a server side, you will know that which pages are being visited by Perplexity, ChatGPT, etc. And then you can figure out like what pages are resonating with them and then write more on that.
Then I think I guess we already covered that part. What question was asked by user in Perplexity, ChatGPT. I think that no AI provider is sharing that information. You do have some visibility, like Aditya was saying, right? Which pages are being visited and so on. And then you can mimic that with the real world data. Quickly to answer the last two questions, then I think the one from Theo is that what is the right actual structure of the site that would make a difference? Think of the LLMs are essentially like trained on structured. They are like trained to parse and read the structured data better. So if you can make sure your site is structured with proper like H2, H1, H2, H3 headings, have proper like structured data in terms of FAQs and so on. A lot of these things do help. So make sure that your site has the right information and it is technically optimized for these models as well. And some of the AI trackers also have that like visibility, have that functionality features to provide you that recommendation on where it can be improved. So that could be another dimension that you can consider if that is important. And then the last question from Alex, what is a good citation? I guess if your main question is more around like how would the AI models like really recognize your brand? I think they are really good at understanding and extracting your brand across different sources. So I wouldn't worry too much about APOB or APOB AI or like mentioning the specific link directly. Even in some cases in the traditional SEO world, people would be worrying about getting like a follow link versus like a no follow link and so on. Yeah, so I think some of these things matter less and less in this new world because obviously, and again, these things are also changing week over week. So take it with that grain of salt. That right now the way these models are like built is that they are looking for understanding when the users are talking about. So they are looking for the semantic meaning versus only like the exact like syntactical kind of a reference. So if you are mentioned in the correct like context, they would be able to figure it out.
As long as you don't have a competitor with a similar domain name in your space, it's fine. You don't have to use that domain name. And if you do have a competitor, maybe you should change your domain name.
Our domain name is unique, so that part is fine. Okay, thank you. So they are smart enough, all those LLMs.
Yeah, I think we are over time, but we are also happy to, if you are interested in exploring what we are offering as a service, happy to talk about that. So feel free to reach out to us on founders@tryzenith.ai or check out our website. Happy to get on a call with you guys and see how we can help you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.